The Ukrainian armed forces are crushing the occupiers. Vladimirovka and Zarechne have been liberated in Donbas. Moscow has earned over €1 billion from metal exports to the European Union. Orban is dividing Ukraine into a Russian demilitarized zone and a Western zone. Putin is preparing to strike the Suwalki Corridor and cut off the Baltics from NATO. In Mariupol, the Russians are going to build a military facility on the territory of Azovstal. And now, propagandist Solovyov's programs have been included in the curriculum of Russian schools. Hello, my name is Yulia Kokan, and right now here are the main stories. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. And let's start with some good news from the front. Our armed forces have liberated another settlement in Donbas, the village of Zarechne. The settlement was deoccupied by the forces of the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skala.
The village of Zarechne was liberated by the forces of the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skala. Glory to Ukraine!
Deep State, in turn, reports that this is not the only achievement of the Ukrainian armed forces. The defense forces of Donbas have liberated another settlement, Vladimirovka. The return of every patch of Ukrainian land is always valuable. But right now, given the situation at the front, it is simply incredible. To give you a sense of the scale, I'll say just one thing. Russia has a threefold advantage at the front.
At the moment, the enemy has a threefold advantage in manpower and resources, and in the main directions where they are concentrating their efforts, they can outnumber us by 4 to 6 times. Nevertheless, I want to express my deep gratitude to our officers, sergeants, and especially our soldiers. Their professional skills, resilience, selflessness, and bravery are thwarting the plans of the Russian occupiers. In fact, the month during which the occupiers pinned their hopes on breakthroughs and exerted maximum effort became the month with the enemy's relatively smallest territorial gains in recent times.
You have to agree, with such a distribution of forces, reclaiming 58 square kilometers in a month is a feat. Next, we will provide more details about what is happening on the front and around it.
The defense forces of Ukraine repelled 170 attacks just in the past day. Our command acknowledges the autumn phase of the Russian offensive has begun. The occupiers have only a couple of months left to improve their positions before winter.
Obviously, the objective here is as follows: to try to enter major Ukrainian cities, specifically Pokrovsk, as well as Kostiantynivka, and accordingly Dobropilya and Mirnorad. If we are talking about the Lyman direction and also the Siversk direction, in order to try to spend another military winter in urban combat. Because obviously fighting in the open field will be much more difficult. It's clear that the Ukrainian defense forces do not agree with this.
However, this time Russia has decided not to spread its forces along the entire front line, but to systematically concentrate pressure on a single point. Having failed to achieve their objectives for the summer, the Russian command has now decided to reinforce the Donetsk direction by sending additional troops there.
It's clear that the Pokrovsk direction truly remains a priority. The Donetsk region remains the main priority. This is the strategic objective that the Russians failed to achieve during the so-called major summer offensive.
At the same time, the Russian command has apparently realized that Pokrovsk cannot be taken by small assault groups. And now, after months of conserving equipment, the Ukrainian armed forces are being spotted more and more frequently in this direction. Infantry still isn't being supplied with armored vehicles, but there is more artillery now.
They are also bringing in heavy equipment there, among other things. People who are fighting there note that there are many self-propelled artillery units of various modifications which are carrying out artillery shelling, and that's in addition to drones and everything else we already know about.
However, in order to gather thousands of new soldiers near the long-suffering Pokrovsk, they had to be redeployed from other directions, since Russia simply has no unused reserves left, analysts say. Russian media have called this the largest rotation. In reality, however, the occupiers are simply being brought to Donetsk region to replace the eliminated assault groups.
Where are the troops being withdrawn from? Not from the rear of the Russian Federation. They don't have any kind of untouchable reserve in the rear. These are troops being moved along the front line, specifically being redeployed from the Kherson direction and from the Sumy direction. So this so-called rotation is most likely not really a rotation at all.
After months of wearing down their units against the defenses of Pokrovsk, the Russian military leadership decided to bypass the city from the flanks and simultaneously attempt to seize major logistical centers of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Let's not forget, of course, the Novopavlivka direction of the front. It's also one of the most active. This is the southern border of Donetsk region, the administrative boundary of Donetsk region. It is clear that there too the enemy is trying, by threatening the Mariupol direction, which is already in Zaporizhia region, to also advance along the left southern flank toward Pokrovsk.
At the same time, the Ukrainian General Staff reports that these enemy attempts have not been successful. On the contrary, due to the reduction of enemy forces in the north and south of the contact line, our troops managed to advance both in the Zaporizhia and Sumy regions. Despite the fact that the front in Sumy region is moving toward the Russian border, it is by no means an easy task.
Assault operations are taking place here constantly on a regular basis. The enemy has been using infantry very actively lately and is employing various drones even more intensively. These include regular radio-controlled FPV drones, fiber-optic FPVs, Molniya drones, and other types of unmanned aerial vehicles. They maintain constant fire on positions at the front line, including in the rear, because the front line in this sector remains relatively static precisely due to the effective work of our units.
Analysts note that in Russian documents everything is the opposite. Reports to the Kremlin speak of constant successes. So, the General Staff believes that troops can be withdrawn from there to Pokrovsk. In reality, however, these fake reports only lead to the occupiers losing more territory and their own soldiers.
Enemy fake reports about security zones in Sumy and Kharkiv are an attempt to cover up operational failures, leading to a dead end and tens of thousands of losses. This year, in the Kursk military district's operational zone, our soldiers eliminated 19,080 enemy fighters and wounded over 25,000.
The Russians are also not seeing any success in the south. After sending part of their units to the Pokrovsk direction, those who remained have suffered a complete fiasco. In particular, according to the Ukrainian command, 57 units of Russian weaponry and equipment have been destroyed there over the past 2 days.
Call the men in white coats because the old man has really lost it. No, we're not talking about Lukashenko or even Putin, but about his loyal Hungarian buddy, the country's Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The Russian madness in this politician's head keeps getting worse, and now he claims that Ukraine will be divided into 3 parts. Just listen to what he's saying.
Today, Europeans speak elegantly about security guarantees, but these guarantees actually mean the partition of Ukraine. The first step has already been taken, since the West has recognized that there is a Russian zone. The only discussion is whether it will be 2 regions beyond Crimea, 4, 5, or 6 regions. But there is no longer any talk about it not existing. The Russian zone has already been created. It includes about 20% of Ukraine. The Russian zone, the demilitarized zone, and finally the Western zone, the outlines and conditions of which we still do not know.
And the most interesting part, Orban insists that Europe has already agreed on the distribution plan, and all that remains is to discuss the width of the demilitarized zone from Russian territory, 40, 50, 100 or 200 kilometers. The not-so-honorable Viktor Orban, I have a counter-proposal. We support a demilitarized zone, but to the east of Ukraine's borders. We are wholeheartedly in favor of relocating Russians 200 kilometers deeper into Russia, farther away from Ukraine. Nevertheless, despite all efforts, the sanctions are not working, and Russia has earned 1.2 billion from exporting metals to the European Union. The bulk of the supplies consisted of semi-finished products made of steel and cast iron. This is evidenced by calculations from the JK Center based on Eurostat data. The largest buyers of Russian metal were Belgium, Italy, the Czech Republic, and Denmark. Despite the sanctions, Russian producers continue to receive significant income from exporting their products to the EU. In particular, last year, this amount exceeded 2.5 billion euros. This indicates the weak effectiveness of the current restrictions and the existence of exceptions that allow the Russian metallurgical industry to export to EU markets. It would be interesting to hear from Europeans themselves. How did it happen that there seem to be sanctions, but in reality, there aren't any? And what do you think about this? Write your thoughts, don't hold back in the comments. Russia is awash with weapons that are being illegally taken from the front lines. The number of people convicted for such crimes has tripled. But that's just a drop in the ocean. After all, far more newly minted arms barons remain uncaught. Everything is being taken out from the front lines of the Russian-Ukrainian war, from pistols to grenade launchers. And then this weapon is used to commit robberies and murders. Russian children will bring it to schools to take revenge on their bullies and teachers. Next, we'll talk about how Russia is being stuffed with illegal weapons.
We must carefully shape the country's future elite for the coming years.
Since the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine, the number of criminal cases against Russian servicemen for illegal arms trafficking has increased at least threefold.
He deliberately heads toward the emergency exit, carefully pulls the pin from the grenade, and he's firmly holding it in his hand. Then, after a brief moment, it violently explodes.
And while in the year 2021 there were 41 such cases officially registered, by the year 2023 their total number had significantly grown to 137.
In the quaint and charming village of Murzo, there, right there, look. It's tied up. And here is the little burbot.
I'll take it.
It's kneading.
And while Russia is being stuffed with illegal weapons, officials talk about the supposed heroics of Russian soldiers to hide the truth.
Today, our guys, regardless of nationality or religion, are defending people's lives from the brown plague, just as their grandfathers and great-grandfathers did. More than 400,000 people have been awarded state honors, and over 300 have become heroes of Russia.
The truth about those who are supposedly supposed to protect us is very bitter. Murders upon returning home, robberies and blackmail. These so-called heroes are bringing everything from pistols to grenade launchers back to civilian life. Among them are those who deserted their unit in Sochi. Those who managed to escape are harder to find. For example, in Bakhchisarai, Alexei Merzlyakov, who was wanted by the authorities, was found with an electric detonator and 600 rounds of ammunition.
I would like to express my profound and sincere gratitude for your thoughtful choice and your decisive actions in diligently defending the vital interests of our beloved country. For our part, we are doing everything to ensure that our guys, the participants in the special military operation, and their families lack nothing. Our President, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, is doing everything for this as well.
Both mobilized soldiers and seasoned professional military personnel end up in the defendant's seat. In the Voronezh region, a serviceman from the Akhmat Russia regiment, Bekan Masayev, was detained. A large arsenal was found in the trunk of his Toyota Land Cruiser. 12 Kalashnikov assault rifles, 5 foreign rifles, 6 machine guns, a sniper rifle, an underbarrel grenade launcher, 2 Glock pistols, magazines, and more than 3,000 rounds of ammunition. Masayev stated that the weapons were trophies and had been brought from the combat zone in Ukraine. Weapons and ammunition are often found among soldiers' personal belongings during inspections at train stations and airports. It was also recently discovered by Deputy Gurulev that the metal detectors at Sheremetyevo do not react to grenades and ammunition.
Unfortunately, soldiers returning from the special military operation may bring a grenade or ammunition with them. But you have a security system, there are metal detectors, everything should be visible. You know, we do have metal detectors, but unfortunately they might not catch it. Oops.
At Saratov airport, a military medic was detained for transporting 60 rounds of ammunition found in the trenches.
Kirillov decided that unaccounted for ammunition could simply be taken for himself, which in fact is exactly what he did. He put the found ammunition into his duffel bag and carried it with him. At Gagarin airport, security staff discovered the dangerous luggage and its owner was detained.
In July, another Akhmat fighter, Adam Kashbagparov, was also caught in Dagestan. 2 hand grenades, a fragmentation round for a grenade launcher, and about 50 rounds of ammunition were found in his car. The junior sergeant who had participated in the war in Ukraine was, on the contrary, detained while returning from vacation. He was found with 74 rounds for a Kalashnikov rifle. As a rule, servicemen claim that they forgot to report the trophies they found or to remove them from their personal belongings.
They're making us let our guard down, you understand? But we have to fight if we've taken on this job.
The arms market is an age-old business.
Well, basically, it's the spring of 2022. But apparently, even now, and even about a year ago, this market, though not very visible, not very large, at least on the surface, already existed. That is to say, it is probably either completely hidden much, much deeper within the shadows, or very closely and intricately intertwined with real, tangible offline crime and various law enforcement agencies.
The price of a Kalashnikov rifle in Russia in 2025 starts at 300,000 rubles, whereas in 2022 they were being sold for 52,000. A Makarov pistol in 2022 could be bought for 23,000 rubles. But in 2025 it goes for 350,000.
To legally acquire a weapon, you would typically need to know some specific law enforcement officers who would be willing to sell it to you.
2 servicemen from the 71st Motor Rifle Division stole 3 rifles, over 1,000 rounds of ammunition, and for good measure, several grenades from a warehouse, after which they sold the rifles to residents of a neighboring village for 15,000 rubles each. If until 2022 such cases were mostly considered in Moscow, the North Caucasus and the Far East, then after 2022 about a quarter of all cases shifted to border courts, in Kursk and Crimea. The thing is, most servicemen are given suspended sentences or fines by the courts. He threatened his wife with a trophy Makarov pistol and got 3.5 years probation. Actual prison sentences are given to servicemen in 40% of cases.
The current pace of arrivals is quite decent indeed and has been maintained at a good level. As of the first day of July, specifically July 1st, a substantial number, more than 210,000 individuals have successfully arrived at various military units and installations.
The number of contract soldiers is growing, says Medvedev, and with it the number of crimes is also increasing. The return of hundreds of thousands of people from Putin's war threatens Russia with a surge in crime.
The Azovstal metallurgical plant in occupied Mariupol will be turned into a military facility. They want to connect it to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. This was reported by the head of the Center for the Study of Occupation, Petro Andriushchenko.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
While the city is surviving without water, the Russians are quietly connecting the destroyed Azovstal to the power grid. A project has been approved to reconstruct 210 kilovolt power lines with a connection to the Azovstal substation number 7.
Andriushchenko published photocopies of several pages from the Territory Planning Project, developed by the Federal State Budgetary Educational Institution of Higher Education, Donbas National Academy of Civil Engineering and Architecture. The project was commissioned by LLC Kashpin. Within its framework, it is planned to reconstruct 26.68 kilometers of power lines and replace 18 supports. But all this construction, Andriushchenko is convinced, is not being organized for no reason.
And now the main point. The line suddenly ends on the right bank of the Kalmius, right before the entrance to the Azovstal territory. That's it. After that, silence. All other infrastructure plans have been classified. This directly points to a plan to turn the Azovstal territory into something far from a peaceful facility. However, this is not just a power line. It is part of a new Russian energy corridor from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to Donetsk region, passing through Volnovakha, Telmanova, and further into Russian territory. In fact, what we've been talking about for over a year is becoming a reality. All under the conspicuous silence of the IAEA and Energodom.
So what exactly are the Russians planning? Share your thoughts in the comments. I see in the comments that we have a lot of viewers from Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, the USA, and Europe. We are very grateful for your support. Let us know which country you're watching from and whether you believe that good will triumph over evil in this war. I'll be happy to read and like your comments this evening. And we continue. Now comes the most interesting part. Meanwhile, there's a fuel crisis in Russia. Now even Moscow and Saratov are out of fuel. Instead of 95 octane, they're forced to fill up with 92 octane, which ruins engines. What's happening with gasoline in the country known as the gas station? And what else should we expect? Let's keep watching.
The war has reached the very Kremlin. The number of cars on the roads in the Russian capital has sharply decreased. And that's because mornings for Muscovites now start not with coffee, but with a hunt for gasoline. In a country with unlimited oil reserves, they've run out of A95 fuel.
That's how it is, friends. This is already the 4th gas station today on the oil highway where I've tried to fill up with 95 octane gasoline. None of them had it.
The farther you get from the Russian capital, the worse the fuel situation becomes. In some places, you can get no more than 10 liters of 95 octane per person, while in other regions, gasoline is only available with ration coupons.
Here it is, the gas station. I became the lucky owner of 32 liters of the highest quality, absolutely top grade, 92 octane gasoline. And here it is, the line, here it goes. 95 octane is only available with coupons.
Russian motorists are filing complaints en masse. Thus, a resident of Kamchatka filed a police report against gas station employees because they refused to sell him 60 liters of gasoline. The man said he owned a tourist camp that relied on gasoline generators to survive. However, this had no effect on the refuelers.
Do you have number 95 here? Don't have 95.
In some Russian cities, it's not just 95 that's missing at gas stations. Even 92 and diesel are disappearing from the pumps. The shortage immediately led to rising prices at Russian gas stations. Every day, fuel beyond the curb gets 1 or 2 rubles more expensive.
Gasoline really has started to get sharply more expensive, and what's most unpleasant has begun to disappear from gas stations.
Russian propaganda is trying to calm the public and stop the panic. Even though gasoline prices in Russia are rising, they're still much lower than in Europe. And you can't argue with that. Despite the sharp price increase, 95 octane gasoline in Russia today costs between 35 and 40 hryvnias per liter. However, that's only because the Kremlin compensates gas station owners for part of the fuel cost. In return, the latter are only required to keep prices at a certain level. Now, with gas stations having sharply raised fuel prices, the government may refuse to compensate them, which would immediately lead to a much more significant increase in retail fuel prices. In that case, the price of 95 octane gasoline in Russia would quickly catch up with the average European prices.
Because of the gasoline crisis, the government wants to reduce payments to oil companies under the so-called fuel damper program. This is compensation for them so that they don't raise gasoline prices, but they keep raising them anyway. So the compensation will be paid out less.
A former deputy minister of energy of the Russian Federation explains, no matter how much money the Kremlin pumps into its refineries, a fuel shortage in Russia is inevitable. The reason for everything is the strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces on oil refineries. Ukrainian drones have successfully disabled between 20 and 25% of Russia's oil refining industry, which is crucial for the country's economy that relies on oil and gas. The shutdown of refineries has already affected the occupiers' military logistics and, overall, the daily lives of most ordinary Russians.
Lenenergo says that everything is just fine with you, it's just the greedy oilmen. The oilmen say we're not greedy, we're actually selling at a loss. Independent gas stations say we're actually going bankrupt right now and we'll have to close. Well, in the end, somehow everything gets sorted out, but apparently this year things are much worse than in previous years.
While the occupiers are mindlessly launching their missiles and drones at peaceful Ukrainian cities, targeting residential buildings, the Ukrainian armed forces are very deliberate in choosing potential targets. Our drones strike specific oil refining and oil transport infrastructure in Russia in such a way that the Kremlin feels the impact immediately.
And right within direct reach of the drones, there are plenty of modernized oil refineries. That is, refineries equipped with imported machinery. Now just try to import even a single individual part into that specific location there.
This tactic allows the Ukrainian armed forces to disable just one small workshop at a massive oil refinery, thereby shutting down the entire fuel production line. Without Western components, Russia simply cannot process its own oil efficiently.
Such equipment isn't made not only in Russia, but much of it isn't produced in China either. Chinese oil refining is also highly dependent on Western technologies. Many of these things are monopolized by American or German manufacturers, technological companies, right? So, of course, because of the sanctions, Russia has lost access to this equipment.
This means that the missing SZS 95 and the now scarce 92 octane gasoline will be replaced by the good old Soviet 76 octane, low quality, low octane fuel suitable only for old Soviet Zhigulis and Zils.
Good news from Ukrainian intelligence. The Cyber Corps of the main intelligence directorate has blocked Russians' fuel cards. In addition, IT specialists have taken down dozens of enemy online resources. This was reported by intelligence sources. The GUR specialists targeted Russian services that provide fuel payments and operate fuel cards. Among them are the Rospetrol platform and the servers of Rostelecom and Lukoil. But that's not all. Cyber specialists destroyed more than 700 switches and 13 servers belonging to the provider K-Corp, which serviced the Russian defense concern Kalashnikov. The attack by the GUR inflicted damage on the aggressor country amounting to between $1 and $3 million. Well, I definitely like this kind of news. Please don't stop, we definitely want more. Putin is watching NATO. There are increasingly clear signs that Russian President Vladimir Putin is actively planning to invade NATO's strategically vital Achilles heel, the critical Suwalki Corridor, which geographically connects Poland with the Baltic states, specifically Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. This was reported by The Sun, citing an investigation by former intelligence officer Philip Ingram. The investigator reminded that the narrow strip of land, about 100 kilometers long, between Poland and Lithuania is the shortest distance between the Russian enclave, Kaliningrad Oblast, and Russia's ally, Belarus. According to him, capturing this corridor would effectively cut off the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia from their NATO allies.
We are seeing an increased Russian military presence in Kaliningrad and Belarus. We are witnessing sudden military exercises and unusual troop movements.
Meanwhile, Germany is boosting its military readiness due to concerns about a possible attack from Russia. In particular, plans include a review of defense spending and the replenishment of strategic reserves of canned goods. This was reported by the Washington Post. The publication notes that special attention is being given to canned ravioli and lentils, which can be quickly prepared in an emergency. Germany's Minister of Food and Agriculture, Alois Rainer, has proposed allocating $105 million for this initiative. Major grocery chains will handle the logistics. And what do you think? How real are the threats reported by the media? And finally, here's some real cringe from RFI. Well, I thought I'd seen it all, but no, just listen to this. In an attempt to instill what they call patriotism in Russia, Russian school children have started being shown, ta-da! Videos featuring the propagandist Solovyov. See for yourself right now.
To those working in the Russian media space, Vladimir Solovyov is indeed the author of this work.
But that's not all. Additionally, as Rospubliks reports, Solovyov is directly included in the school curriculum for brainwashing Russian children. Well, Russia has hit a new low again. Do you agree? I just wonder, where is the limit? What do you think of our news? Let us know what we should change to get better. We'll definitely take it into account. In the meantime, please like this video to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss future episodes. See you again very, very soon.